Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm here with Peter Scalzo on our concluding episodes of his journal.
Yeah.
That we've been doing this for a few weeks, going to the journal. And so how does it feel?
I have more clarity.
You have more clarity.
Yeah. Do you want to know what in or what with?
Well, it sounds like you're going to tell me either way. So yeah.
So I think that, and I never really dissected it before. So thank you, Sean, because you really led me through this process, but of just what it was like to face this huge insurmountable wall, what it was like to start to chip away or begin to walk into this wall, what it was like inside the wall, which is that place that you can't figure out. And then what is it like now to sort of, I'm getting ready to maybe get to the back part of this wall. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I've processed a lot, and now I'm sort of getting to the back part of the wall. I'm still in it, but I feel like I've processed a lot and I've recovered quite a bit, and I've learned and I've grown and transformed, and now I'm getting ready to hopefully exit the wall, but get close to that point.
Did you experience some of the feelings fresh as you were going through this? What was it like to go back into?
Well, I think the only time I did was when you asked me to dig into the smells of the room, the people in the room, what was going on in the room. And mm-hmm. I cannot, because I've been thinking about it, because I wasn't all that descriptive, but I can say that I think that I've pushed a lot of it out because it was such a negative experience for me. I have almost like glimpses of things that happened, mm-hmm. but I don't have like full recollection that I might with my oldest being born, right? It was 36 years ago. I almost have a full recollection of what happened. Mm. But I don't have that. I have little glimpses, little snapshots of things that happen. And maybe that's the anesthesia coming out of it, or just it was so negative and so traumatic, I think, that
you're having to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have experienced sort of stepping back into that place, but I have not immersed myself into it. I sort of visited it and got out. Visited it, got out.
We're in 2015 right now.
Yeah.
And let's say you know the journey up till now. Mm-hmm. What would it feel like to face that with this knowledge of what you've gone through? Because it seems like, generally in life, we don't want to go back to certain things because they're too painful to go back to.
Yeah.
And so I think I've heard you say before about your cancer journey. I think about a lot of my life experiences is I wouldn't choose to do anything different, but I don't think I'd ever want to do this again.
Right.
And it feels that way at times that, hey, there was something that was really big about going through this, but if I had to do that again, I don't know if I would.
Right. Yeah, I have that feeling.
Yeah. We're at this part in your journal where you've described, almost a month's worth of interactions, and you had spoken about truths. Mm-hmm. You've spoken about different things that you believed about God and about relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say something right now, which is sort of a big picture thing. Average guy getting hit with a cancer diagnosis 10 years earlier than this, when this journal happened, and then 43 years of age, an attorney with 6 children getting hit with, you aren't going to live, and not knowing at all what to do, how to handle it. I mean, it's not like there's a guidebook for this. As I was sitting there, I didn't know what to do, and I was so distraught and depressed and devastated. That devastation as a whole, that it's that feeling of life is over. How do I pick myself up? I can't. And
You're also dealing with other things that are happening that are even very hard walls at the exact same time that are happening in your family and life.
Yeah.
And so you're at a complete devastation point when this is happening.
Yeah. I mean, even if Leslie was here right now, we would acknowledge that we were in the middle of marriage conflicts that were really difficult. Our daughter had drug addiction issues, and I was trying to run a legal practice. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts that weren't going that great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think today's topic is really great about that, because it was at the point when I could process it. It was like, okay, let's talk about what is great. But anyway, I'm not at that point yet.
Yeah.
I'm in the point of devastation. And I think, I don't want to say my journal is a guidebook, but I do want to say this is how I was able to work through the wall, chip away at it, go through the confusing in between, and sort of come out ready to come out in a much different place than when I started. But I had to process those emotions. I had to stand in truth. There were choices that I made that I found to be essential for journeying through the wall.
Yeah, I like something that you just highlighted, and I'm going to restate it again in a slightly different words, but I think the idea of you don't have the formula.
No.
And so we're in talking about this was never about giving people a formula. If you do my formula, X plus Y, you're going to get Z outcome of peace. In this case, it's cancer and peace. But what you would say is you're sharing your story because it has trail markers of your journey that might be helpful to others in their journey. When they hear your journey, they can see these trail markers and say, hey, I see that those are things that I might want to follow also or be involved with because it helped you in finding your journey of peace.
I mean, I've talked to lots of cancer folks who I know personally who have come out and said, oh, I had instant peace when I had got my cancer diagnosis. We even had one on our podcast here who said that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, no, I experienced instant peace. The journey was hard, but that's not been my experience. So I can't just stand here and say, oh yeah, I had instant peace. There was a process I had to go through to find peace.
I want to ask a question that pertains to the conversation we had a few minutes ago. That's, and if it's okay,
I don't know. Depends on the question.
Well, it's going to get down to something personal, and the personal side is when you went through the cancer journey, it probably attacked your feeling when you went through this particularly because you had everything stripped from you. You were having to address this question of whether you were even wanted by God, in the sense of that were you the most important aspect of being valued by God enough to to be part of something that it felt like something was being taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And it pertains to us talking about, your sense of at times having to deal with wanting to be wanted. And so in this process, everything was stripped from you.
Mm-hmm.
And on the surface, it might've looked like that there was a pattern that was being fulfilled here of, to confirm unwantedness. But I would actually now thinking about your journey and what's going on, it was like God was wanting to show you how much he wanted you, how much he valued you, how much he desired, to be in deep relationship with you. And it, on the surface, I think it looked like the exact opposite.
It did.
And so
it's a great observation. Yeah, it did. And it didn't feel like that's what he wanted.
Right.
It literally felt like he had walked away.
Yes. Like you were 5 years old again.
Yep. And he had walked away and left me. And what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's something that's healing about this story because he showed you the exact opposite, but it took some time.
Yeah.
And today our tool that you're going to talk about is this gratitude list. Is this, you made a gratitude journal in here. And so I want you just to tell people, hey, what inspired you to start doing this and what it meant for you. And we can just talk about it a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I can't emphasize enough. And there's a lot out there. You go on social media and people are like, do a gratitude. There's a lot about gratitude out there. But I will say my own personal experience was the setting was in the hospital still. The prognosis didn't change the whole time I was there. It was a 5% survival rate. I was just trying to recover from this massive surgery that I had, and my intestines wouldn't open up with these massive surgeries, so I would have to stay like 3 weeks to a month in the hospital and be fed intravenously, all that, and hope that my intestines would just open up. And but I remember dealing with the prospect of passing, that this most likely would be how I'm going to pass, is from this cancer journey. I'm 52, whatever I was at the time. And so I'm sitting there in my hospital bed. I remember where I was. I was just in the doldrums of the moment. Yes, I had processed a lot. I was in a different place. I was in a much better place. But I still didn't feel like getting up and walking around and doing recovery physically, because that was hard work. And I was like, what's the point? Really? Yeah. And at that juncture right there, I remember thinking about a certain Bible verse that talks about, in all circumstances, give thanks. And I'm like, it came into my head, that verse. Like, pray without seeking, and all things give. And I'm like, what do you mean give thanks in all circumstances? And I just took like a leap of faith and said, I'm just going to try it. And the minute I turned the faucet on, because the faucet was off. The minute I turned it on, and I was like, my gosh, I've lived a full life. I have all these children. I've done all this stuff. I have all these friends, relationships galore, all this stuff. And I thought, wow. And it became a completely different recovery journey from that point on.
So you're going to read a few of those for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I put down, born into a good family, with two parents that loved each other.
If your family listened to this and didn't hear great, I'm on another going to.
Yeah, no, not great, you all. just okay.
Sorry.
Youngest of four.
Mm-hmm.
I like being the youngest of four. My brother and sisters would say I was spoiled. Darn right, I was spoiled.
You're grateful for that.
I am.
Nice,
I love the hot fudge sundaes. We had no needs materially. I mean, my dad, even though he didn't just give us stuff like, we had to work, I always knew that, we weren't going to starve. We weren't going to be put out on the street. My dad worked hard, provided well. That was a secure feeling for me as a boy growing up.
Nice.
I surrendered my life to Christ when I was 10. I started this unique life of faith. I mean, I consider this journey with God to have been, it has its ups and downs, but talk about a rich life. I mean, amazing, right? Just a perspective that's been, I mean, to have the living God inside of you doing life is just unbelievable. We lived in a nice area. We grew up in Brookfield, Connecticut. It's a high standard of living, affluent area. The schools were good. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lake. It was a nice place to grow up. We skied in the winter, went to the ocean in the summer. It was nice. I had great friends. I went to good schools. I had nice vacations. Life was good. I enjoyed sports and did well at them. Some sports I did very well at. I love working out, and I was healthy. I could lift weights, I could run, I could do those things, and I love that feeling of working out. Right? You've done a lot of that, Sean. So Maybe not
Not
lately.
recently.
I said it first. I met and dated one of the most beautiful women I had ever met. I mean, that was a positive. Leslie and I, that we were high school sweethearts, right? And I was like, wow, that was really cool. Who gets to say that they met this unbelievable person and, dated a high school and then got married? It's kind of like a dream.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good job in the family business starting out. Yes, my dad was my boss, which was hard, but it was a good business and it was a good job. I mean, how many of us have jobs where we could just walk right into, a family business? I totally dedicated my life to God when I was 18, and I experienced a whole nother level of his presence when that happened. And I was very grateful for that because it sort of changed the course of my life. I was more interested in pursuing like scripture and other things like that. And I had 6 unbelievable kids at that point, 6 of them. I had the opportunity with 3 children to go back to school and go to law school. That was a blast for me. I love going to law school and learning law, learning all that stuff and becoming an attorney. And at that point, and I like going to a Christian college too. I still have one of my college roommates just rang the bell on the NYSE the other day because of he's into buying and selling banks. So I still talk to him. He wanted me to come down to the city, but I couldn't. Mm-hmm. So I still have these relationships from high school to college. I mean, that's amazing. My children are older when I wrote this, and they're all doing well at that point. They were doing great. I was married for 32 years at that time, and I survived 2 cancers for 10 years. I have good relationships with my dad and my stepmom, in-laws at that point, my brother and sisters, kids. I am content. I was content with my life. I've said God has let me serve him in many leadership and servant positions. I put down he let me go to Israel 7 times. I had a blast each time I went there.
It's interesting. How much more you have?
That's about it.
You're getting close to the end.
Yeah.
You recognized something in writing this out that, how did you feel?
Unbelievable. I felt like the rest would be gravy, that I had done. I look back on my life and I'm like, wow, I am so satisfied with my life. And I said, I might as well just get up and do this recovery. I have no idea if I'm going to pass next week, 6 months from now, but I might as well go ahead and do it. And my level of appreciation to God changed. It was a recognition of the good things he had brought into my life, and that was a comforting, peaceful, secure feeling.
That's what I wanted to explore just for a couple seconds here.
Yeah.
Is I was asking because the actual feeling is important. Like when you feel gratitude, if you go back to one of those moments where you feel real gratitude, one of my favorites for me is to go back and when my first grandson was born.
Yeah.
And we got to go to the hospital and I got to hold him for the first time.
Yeah.
And, it's been a lot of years since I've had kids. So, and I can remember those experiences, but this is more recent. And so the sense of gratitude of holding that grandkid for the first time, I can feel the sensations in my body.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of asking for that, like, what did it feel like in the sensations of your body when you thought about some of these things?
Yeah. It felt warm. It felt light. It felt uplifting.
Where?
Definitely light in my head and my core, and warmth in my core. It gave me an extra level of energy that I didn't have before to kind of get up and move around. It was like, I'm going to describe it like this. If you've ever had a burden, sort of a big burden, taken off of your shoulders.
Yes.
That's what it felt like.
Yes. That's what you just described as something I wanted to, I'm glad you were able to say it just like that, because that was so important. And I think we've mentioned this before, but this idea that, at least from a clinical perspective, I've been told that you cannot experience gratitude, whatever those feelings of gratitude feel like, and anxiety at the same time.
Oh.
You're only able to feel one or the other. And so why this is such an important part of the process isn't just a recognition. Like I think what you did is you took a recognition of you had been blessed. Mm-hmm. In the fullness of things that you might have. If you had a bucket list of life, you likely would have ticked off, 9 out of 10 items on your list of bucket list items. If you were to have pre-written that, the things that you described were something that showed complete and fullness. And that's one thing, but it's a whole other thing to feel gratitude, because when you felt gratitude, you wouldn't have had the ability to feel anxiety about a potential impending death. And that's an amazing thing, because if you can feel gratitude, you said it felt as if a weight was lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah, I felt light. I felt light.
You weren't feeling anxiety about the future, about tomorrow. You were feeling anxiety. And it's interesting that we were designed this way. We as humans were designed this way, to only experience one or the other. And the real interesting thing is that you made a choice. What you described as you read you recalled at least a passage about giving thanks to God in all things. And you said, I'm going to give it a try. It wasn't like you were clinically going, hey, I heard a counselor tell me I need to do this. It's as if God called you inside of you to say, hey, take time to reflect on your life. And you did, and you gave thanks just out of, I'm going to call it obedience, to something that at least experimenting to try, hey, what would you do in that, God? You were, it's like a surrender moment, it sounds like. And in the midst of that, this truth came out, and that is, when you do that and you can actually experience and enter into those feelings, you can't experience anxiety at the same time. The two don't exist in the same sphere.
Wow.
Now you can say words of gratitude and not feel them, and still feel anxiety. So I'm trying to be really clear here, is that you have to actually feel gratitude. And so when you go to those feelings of gratitude, you won't feel anxiety.
Yeah.
And so for that period of time, and so maybe there's a reason why the Bible says give thanks always.
Yeah.
If you don't want to live in anxiety, it's a tool. It's a resource.
I think it's an attractive quality. Like, I like hanging out with people that are grateful.
Yes.
It feels good to hang out with people that are grateful. It's an attractive quality.
Yes. And what do you suppose that you see and feel about it?
Because in contrast to someone who's like complaining and being negative and finding fault, which is a burden, which is a load.
Yeah.
And being around somebody that's grateful, it's light. Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
Yeah, I think this speaks to something about our own neuroscience, where when we're around grateful people, there's something that's happening in our neurons, or that we're in unison together. Both of our brains are being stimulated in a positive way towards positive feelings. And when you're around somebody who's negative and complaining, depression, anxiety are things that you feel and sense, and as part of our own neural network, so to speak, that's what's taking place, is what I believe. That's my experiences in life tell me that's the case.
I've been both.
Yeah.
I've been really negative before, and I've been very grateful before.
Well, you started out this journal in a very negative place.
Yeah.
And you ended your journal with gratitude. and that kicked off into something that you found to be really important in the process. Why I thought this.
Well, and it really was a journey to peace because, again, my prognosis and diagnosis didn't change.
It didn't matter anymore.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting that it
Yeah.
didn't matter anymore? And I think that's just a great way to close the journal out here. Is like when you think about once you were able to be grateful for what had been given, you said it's like anything else was just gravy.
Right.
And it has been in one sense.
Yeah.
Not easy, but it's been additional blessing. Additional
Right.
blessing is probably a better way of saying it. It's like you've experienced so much additional blessing by continuing forward.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those things that I was grateful for instance, my marriage or my legal career, I don't have anymore.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
I picked up on that too, as there was there was an importance in going through those things though.
Yeah.
I mean, the legal career is an example. Is what I mean by that is that there was purpose.
Well, let's say that you've met people before that have said to you, I've always wanted to be X or to do X, but I couldn't, right?
Yeah.
Like my dad, he worked in his family business and he always wanted to go to college and stuff like that, but he felt obligated and he chose to work in the family business kind of thing. But I can honestly say that being an attorney for me was like a dream, and I was able to do my dream. I don't know if there's many of us that can say I was able to do my dream. I mean, I was realistic about, the skills and everything that I had. Like if I said I want to be a professional baseball player, it wouldn't matter because I don't have the skills. But I was able to actually do something that I thought was really cool, which was to become an attorney. Something I always wanted to do.
I see something here in the story, and I see what you're sharing right now is from the blessing side. Your journal started out with the opposite was bitterness, anger, and bitterness, and one might easily look at it and go, "You were wrong." But the truth is that what you've documented here isn't negative emotions aren't by their very nature wrong. There's a processing that takes place, and you move from bitterness and anger because you had expectations that the reality was different than, to coming to a place of reality because you begin to speak truths, to a place of gratitude, which was an understanding of how much you have been given.
Yeah.
And then in that place, it's as if your perspective now has been realigned to God's perspective. And it wasn't that you were wrong before, is that your perspective was unmet expectations that had to be aligned to God's expectations. And I think part of the journey to peace is figuring out how to align to what God actually has for your life. Every one of us has a purpose. God has a plan for our life, and it's generally not the same plan that we have. And so our disappointment, anger, and bitterness happens when we have unmet expectations.
Yeah.
And you had unmet expectations. And once those were fully aligned with God, there was much greater peace. It wasn't that you were ready to die or that you thought everything was fulfilled, but in a sense, this process that you went through the journal was aligning your narrative, your story to God's real story for your life. Right. And working through the bitterness and disappointments of that not being what your expectations were, and then reflecting on the glory of what was actually really given.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a wonderful point. I was talking last night with my girlfriend about limits. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of limits placed on me. Like I was telling her, I can't practice law. I would have loved to continue doing that. Also physically, I was an athlete before, and I'm not now. I can't. I can't even. It's hard for me to walk now like a mile. And so can I embrace those limits? So can I work through the grief and unmet expectation kind of thing? And if I'm able to work through the grief, the anger, sadness, all that, bargaining, all that, denial, and accept my new normal, then there's peace when I come out, like you said, peace when I get to that point when I can do that.
And let's say it even one step after.
Yeah.
This is the Scalzo term.
Yeah.
You find the gift in the limits.
Yeah.
Because you've had a gift before of being able to be, few people got to be college athletes.
Right.
Few people got to be attorneys.
Right.
You had a gift that's been taken away.
Right.
But there's new gifts even in the limits. And I think that's what you're describing here is that you found, even with those limits weren't just limits that were there to harm you. There was something new there to explore. It's a new season, a new something that drew you into something even deeper than what that you hadn't experienced before.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'll get back to this point. I put physical healing on a shelf. I asked for it, but put it on a shelf. Because, I mean, to me, the journey, the real nuts and bolts of the journey is accepting reality. What we just said, accepting reality and then being transformed by God in it. I think of David all through the Psalms. He has a rough time. Stuff he says is really hard. And he processes a lot within those Psalms, and that's part of our scripture.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's what you've done in your journal. And I want to say thank you for sharing that with all of us.
Yeah.
I think it was a great journey, and it's just a good example, a trail marker for how there's a bunch of trail markers inside of it of how you've worked through that particular wall of your life. It wasn't your only wall, the biggest, I think, that you had of walls in your life, but what a major journey that was, and to share in the intimate details of your journal was pretty cool. And so I just want to say on a personal side, thank you. And I'm going to bet others feel the same way. That
you want to say anything about the shirt I'm wearing? It's new, right? You haven't seen it since a couple of years ago, or no?
So for our viewers' pleasure, you can watch on YouTube that Peter has a green shirt on that he was awakened this morning at 3:00 with medical issues and threw some clothes on and went to the hospital to have some procedure done. And so
that's right.
He showed up here afterwards a little rough looking.
Yeah.
So even you had this pack in your knee here.
That's my nephrostomy bag.
So, but I wasn't mocking. You're mocking yourself.
You don't want to talk about my wardrobe, de minimis?
I know that your girlfriend thinks I talk about your clothes too much, so I'm going to leave it there today.
Yeah. All right.
So
thanks, Sean.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
We'll see you again on Cancer and Peace. And check out the website, cancerandpeace.com. Thanks.
Thanks.